New month, new topic, and this month we're talking um, training pregnant women, which I'm glad you requested because I guess I'm submerged in it a lot, so I feel like the messages are getting out there and they're saturated, but there's still a lot of questions and a lot of myths surrounding exercise and movement when you're pregnant. So the fact is, women should start exercising if they don't already when they fall pregnant. The idea that you shouldn't start anything new is an absolute myth in this scenario. So there's certain health risks that are aligned with a sedentary lifestyle that can be sort of put on par with smoking. And I don't say that to scare you, but sitting still, like I'm sitting now, is actually really bad for you, pregnant or not. And it's our job to get people moving. So in a non-judgmental, nurturing and sensible way, we got to get our pregnant women up and walking at least. So if you're not qualified to train women throughout their pregnancy, you probably should start because there's a huge untapped potential in the number of women who are currently working sedentary jobs that will get pregnant one day. 80% of them will get pregnant and then be advised to begin exercising at that time. So conversely, it's also not true that women should continue doing what they always have when they fall pregnant. There are some there's some things we need to modify and look out for and be aware of, which is why having a qualification is so important. And we're going to go through all these this month. We're going to go through where to start, how to modify if they're at the other end of the extreme and extremely active, and then a few little bits and bobs that you may not have thought of around breastfeeding and training while pregnant. So while we're going ahead with the training is good for you rule, there is some situations where exercise is contraindicated. And the first thing I have to draw your attention to is training through IVF treatment. There's certain times when a woman is trying to get pregnant through IVF where training more than 4 times a week is actually linked with worse outcomes. So again, you need to be qualified, probably not just in pregnancy training. I have a mini course in training through IVF. And if you have any clients that are thinking about or doing it, it's an hour course. It'll give you the bare essentials and it'll make sure that you help, not harm your client. So contraindications to exercise when pregnant. This is from the American Congress of Gynecologists, which is the one of the experts or world leaders in guidelines. Okay, so absolute contraindications to exercising during pregnancy include significant heart disease, restrictive lung disease, an incompetent cervix or cerclage. Incompetent cervix is where the cervix hasn't closed completely, so there's a risk of premature labor. And cerclage is when they put a stitch in it to make sure it stays shut. So if she does go into premature labor, she can't physically give birth, and that's life-threatening. So it's an absolute contraindication. It's not saying that exercise is going to cause something bad to happen or exercise causes preterm labor. What it is saying is we don't want to mess with that body. Don't want to mess with the status quo with how she is and what she's doing now. And you certainly don't want to risk that happening in your gym. Other absolute contraindications include multiple gestation, so that's twins or more, persistent second or third trimester bleeding, placenta previa after 26 weeks, which is where the placenta is actually covering the cervix, which means if she goes into labor, there's a risk of rupturing that organ. Rupturing any organ is not a good thing. If she has ruptured membranes, which is basically the same as saying her waters have broken, and if she has pregnancy-induced hypertension. So those are situations where we would not train that client unless she has a supervisor, an obstetrician, gynecologist, someone supervising her, who is also supervising us and guiding us. So let's start with that. If you want the link to that IVF course, direct message me. Otherwise, I'll see you next week and we will discuss where to start with these populations.